Be still. Quite a word, it's 2 words, isn't it? We say it as a parent. We say it to ourselves. Be still. A very simple 2-word instruction, but much more easily said than done. Yet when preparing our hearts and minds for the service for today, there were 2 words that we just could not get away from. Be still. In principle, we think of the summer hymn, summer season, time as a rest and relaxation. You know, going to the cottage or going to the beach, going on vacation. In principle, opportunities to be still. But in reality, Noel and those who work with him, round back there many times, don't have much time for R&R, and there are others of us who might even say at the end of summer, I am looking forward to getting back to work for rest. We do thank those people who work very hard here in this summer. So we thought it might be helpful this morning to look briefly at the invitation issued by God in his Old Testament. Psalm 46, verse 10, says it very simply, and you know it very well. Be still and know that I am God. And the equally lovely invitation issued by Jesus, Matthew 11, 28 to 30. As paraphrased in the Message, it says, learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Just let me say that again. Just think of those words. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace, and to allow them to resonate deep, deep within our souls. And because I really am still learning to practice what I preach, I am speaking to myself as much as to all of you. And I am going to keep it very simple by sharing with you 6 thoughts under headings with which we are very familiar, so that when you walk out of one of those doors, you will walk out, have to bring back to your mind and heart some of what God has said to you, to us this morning, and to ask this question: who, what, why, when, where, and out. Who, what, why, when, where, and how.
So then, let's start with who. Who is it who is invited to be still? Who is it who is invited to learn the unforced rhythms of God's grace? All of us. Do I hear some of you saying, you must be joking. It is absolutely impossible for me to sit still, never mind stand still. And the thought of standing silent, wow, is it possible? And I can understand why we might say that. It's some years now, isn't it, since the phrase multitasking was coined. Can you remember way back to that phrase, multitasking? I have to say, I don't know that it works. Who am I to say? But if I'm trying to do this, as well as the same time as I do that, I don't think I do either one of them as well as I might do if I gave single-minded tasking. But I think about that. I think about the changes that have happened since multitasking, particularly what I refer to as evil necessities of my life. Have you any idea what a 74-year-old woman might regard as an evil necessity of her life? Any offers?
Telephone, she said.
The cell phone. You are so right. I remember, and I wrote it here in the notes, going to Singapore some years ago. We had this great big long title for a while that we won't bore you with, but the general gave us the great privilege of traveling around the world for 2 years, calling the Salvation Army back to worship. And we found ourselves in Singapore. Now, Singapore was way ahead of the game. And here I am in my old-fashioned way, and I go to read the Bible, and I invite everybody to turn to the Bible. And what did they do? They all got their cell phones out. And I thought, how rude, how rude. Until the translator whispered in my ear, they've got the Bible on their cell phone. This is the age in which we are living. But whether we like it or not, with all the modern gizmos that there really are no shortcuts to learning the unforced rhythms of grace. And Jesus really did practice what he preached. Among my stuff is a study that I once prepared called The Prayer Life of Jesus. I left it with Liz this week, and I forgot to look in the foyer to see if she was able to make any copies for you. If she didn't, and you're interested after the fact, we can provide them for you. But I was amazed. And here's a lovely summer study for you. To go through the Gospels and to really realize afresh just how much of his time Jesus spent communing with the Father. He really did practice what he preached when he gave us a pattern for prayer. Having said all of that, there are still some of us who might think it's unreasonable of me to suggest the summer as a time to continue to develop this habit of time with God, or to develop it more deeply. And for others, and I think about Noel sitting here at the front and all that he will be doing, and he's not the only one through the summer, with a schedule probably even more hectic than the rest of the year, and saying to me, you must be joking. Well, if that is the case, may I share with you the gist of some words spoken by Martin Luther, who once said words to this effect: I shall be very busy today, so I need to spend extra time in prayer. Yes, right, some of you might still say, I get the who includes all of us, but then you might be prompted to follow it with the 64,000 questions of how and when and where.
I'm not dodging the question when I say first, where there is a will, there's a way. Rather, God brought back to my mind a video clip that Captain Michelle Mercer used when she was here. And she confessed, I can't remember the content of her sermon, but the clip comes back to my mind every time I set off for the gym, most weekdays. It is a clip that provides one answer to both when and where. It was a young man driving to work and praying aloud as he drove. It was something that I'd never thought about doing when I was driving. But ever since, on my drives to the gym, because I try to go to the gym at least 4 times a week, in the week, I go to the gym and I pray going to the gym. It seems silly, why don't I pray when I go to other places? But the gym somehow, and the focus, and the fact, well, I'm going to pray to the Lord, and then in that sense, I'm going to do better, because I've been in the sense of being with the Lord. Obviously, that is not the only one, when and where, but it is a very practical one.
And what of how? There are so very many tools to help us. We have a lovely library here. If you're looking for some tools to help you with devotional books, the Bible itself, so many of the lovely Psalms, you need to look no further than prayers that were made many, many years ago and look at them long enough to say, how can I make this prayer my own? Never mind the Christian bookstores that there are who can give us so many, many tools as well. And I've already referred to the copies of the Prayer Life of Jesus that can be so helpful in that regard. Just going through the Gospels, seeing the time that Jesus took, I think can be an encouragement. And look what he prayed about and how he prayed. And there, a very simple tool for us all to use. And another is simply by dissecting the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray. We've come to call it the Lord's Prayer, but it was really a prayer that Jesus gave as a pattern for prayer for those who would follow him, and really taking it phrase by phrase by phrase by phrase. It can have a depth of meaning that can really resonate every single day, and we can meditate on what each phrase might mean, no matter what our circumstances might be.
So we come to the next word, when. And when can mean so many difficult things, can't it? Because we have such a busy life, which Gwen has already mentioned. Even in retirement, we still don't seem to, in our couple, in our relationship anyway, and I'm sure it's all of us who are retired, we don't just sit there and watching TV. We're very busy doing a lot of things, and sometimes you think we don't have enough time, so when is very important. It really is a $64,000 question. The simple answer is, when you want, feel, or need to really come before the Lord, it's at a time that works best for you. It's nice to get a nice book from a Salvation Army place or a religious place, and it'll tell you all of these things about how you can do this. The truth is, it's what I want or able to be able to do. And it's a very simple thing to find out what works for you in a very special way. I have an old-fashioned day timer. You know those big day timer? I've been using it for years, and I've seen some really more modern ones, but my brain can't adjust, so I'm still with this day timer. But I love my day timer, and when I was an active officer, it really governed where I was and what I was doing. And then when I started to write out at the beginning of every day, personal time with God. That's very hard. When you're busy, you forget about God. Or even if you know you're thinking of God, when you're very busy and things need to be done, oh, well, this needs to be done, we do need very much personal time with God. So now in such a way of life that I wouldn't dream now in a day if I did not have time with God. Now, I know I'm retired, and I know those who are working all day, but even 5 minutes with God, really with God, is real. You know it's real. You can tell when you're in touch with real. We're blessed. And then what about? We had when, we've had how, we had when, we had now where. We are blessed in our house to have a 3-bedroomed condo. So I use one of them as an office, and then that is where I meet God every morning. Gwen uses her 3rd bedroom, where she has a pull-out couch, so she uses a second lounge, and you may not feel to know where, but it can be very helpful to have a special place. Keep your prayer resources in that place. It's beautiful these days that when you go to one of the religious stores, the resources, it's enormous. Sometimes it's overpowering, but there are some very simple ones which just says it, and it hits you, and you take it home, and you start then to work it through as it comes. So that's where.
And so then we hope that you found these simple, practical, not too heavy, we hope, thoughts helpful to carry away as we move into the week ahead and the season ahead, remembering again that we are living in that beautiful phrase, the rhythms of grace. So to help us to continue to reflect, Robert's going to move to the piano now, and he's going to start playing for us the very simple little old chorus based in one of the Psalms, where it is God who says to you and to me, first of all, this is God speaking, "Be still and know that I am God." And even as I wrote that down, I remembered going all the way back to one of the more recent, well, it's not recent in the grand scheme of things when you've been as old as me, movies about the 10 Commandments, and hearing the director in an interview talk about who he was going to use to be the voice of God that would speak it to Moses in the desert and send him all the way back to face Pharaoh. And he said at the end of the day, he felt he could only use God speaking using Moses' own voice. Like this inner voice that we have within, this authentic voice that is God resonating so much with us. So in your heart, listen to God's voice, even though it's your voice you're going to hear singing this little line that says, "Be still and know that I am God." And if it would help you this morning, as Robert begins to play the little song, we know this place of prayer is always open. We know we can pray anywhere. But if there are those this morning, one even, who might want to come and say, well, for the rest of this summer, I'm going to really commit, no matter what, no matter how disruptive my routine is from the norm, every single day to take some quiet time to be still and recognize that God is with me, helping and governing and guiding. So this place of prayer is open for those who may want to come and use it as we gently sing together this little refrain, "Be still and know." Just whisper it out to God, God speaking through you to yourself.